we can already see the leather coming back to life. Here's how to restore a faded leather jacket. Now, some might say that this leather jacket has patina, but the problem with finished leather like this is that if it is not waxed and sealed, it will begin to crack, break, and become brittle. If we look at the pocket on the interior of the jacket, we can see what the leather originally looked like. Our goal is to return it back to this state. Now, before I soak down a leather jacket with saddle soap or a mild detergent, I do a quick wipe test with distilled water and a paper towel. I get my paper towel just barely damp with 1 or 2 sprays from a misting bottle, and I wipe down an area to see how much cleaning this leather jacket might need. And I'll do this in several areas on the jacket. The key here is a damp but not wet towel. When working with leather, you don't want to soak it with water because it could take days to dry and it could dry out and crack the leather. A pack of little mister bottles like this is $5 on Amazon. Link down below if you want to pick some up. From the wipe test, I can tell that this jacket isn't really that dirty. It's just old and dried out. But I'm still going to take a brush and brush out all the seams and any places where dirt and dust might reside. Today we're going to oil the leather with leather honey to let some moisture soak back into this old, hard, dry leather, and then we'll wax and polish it and get it back to its original shine. When testing any conditioner or oil, I like to do it on the inside of the jacket here where it's not as noticeable if it ends up being too dark and you want to go with a different conditioner. If you're really concerned about how a conditioner will darken or change the color of your leather, I'd allow this to completely dry overnight, buff it out with a dry microfiber towel, and look at it then. I'll be using an applicator sponge, but when leather is this dry, you can actually just rub it in with your hands if you so choose. But I can already tell this jacket is going to need a lot of love. Generally, I would never apply conditioner directly to the leather because it's not the most even application. But again, we're just trying to get oil back into this very dry, very old leather. I might end up having to use this entire 8-ounce bottle for this full leather jacket. When it comes to leather care, you don't need a bunch of fancy tools. If you're gonna spend money, I would spend it on the conditioner and the wax, not the applicator. Even after just one application of leather honey, we can already see the leather coming back to life. Another reason I'm not using an applicator is because a lot of the product is going to be soaked up by the sponge. Whereas on my fingers, I'm really getting as much product into the leather as I can, not into the sponge or the applicator. Now I will apply conditioner to the brush to get into these seams and harder to reach areas. Now essentially what I'm doing is just letting the leather soak up this oil. Now I get questions, are there any conditioners that will not darken leather? The short answer is no, not really. There are things like balm proofers that are water and stain repellents. Balm proofers are basically like a protective barrier, but not necessarily a conditioner, so it will not moisturize your leather. It's more of a protectant. For larger areas, I'm just applying directly to leather and spreading with my hands. For the zipper areas, I'm using my sponge applicator for a little bit more control. This jacket cost me $30 on Facebook Marketplace. I bought it specifically to restore. Now after this is conditioned and waxed, how often should it be maintained? These big types of conditionings and polishings, maybe twice a year, depending on how often you use your jacket. If this is a motorcycle jacket, it's in the sun a lot, it's in the rain, it's getting salt on it, dirt, whatever, then I'd say up it up to maybe 4 times a year, or really as needed. Especially if you have black leather, that just tends to soak up the sun and it fades much more quickly than brown leather. You can tell by how almost instantly this leather honey is getting absorbed that this leather is dry and it is thirsty. It's okay, buddy. We're here to save you. Now, most any conditioner will work as long as it doesn't have beeswax, paraffin wax, because we don't want to seal the leather just yet. We just want to put that moisture in there and then lock it in there with some wax to create a protective barrier and allow this leather to really recover. I might have to send this Facebook seller a before and after of this jacket. I remember my brother sold this old Volkswagen Jetta, just kind of this beater car. And the guy that bought it went and got it repainted, put some rims on it. And he came back a few weeks later to get a spare key my brother had found. My brother was like, oh man, why did I ever sell that thing? We're giving this jacket another lease on life. Leave a comment down below. Should I have left the patina? Personally, if it's a top grain leather, if it's a finished leather, I like it looking as clean and polished as possible. If I wanted a more patina leather, I would look for something in suede or nubuck. Even though this is a lot of surface area, this is a lot of fun for me. Generally, when I restore leather, I have to be very careful with the application and make sure that the color's even, but this is so dry and old, I can just throw a bunch of leather honey on here and let it start soaking in. I feel like there's something therapeutic about bringing back leather to life, things that are old and forgotten that get restored. To me, it's just super relaxing. Part of me just wants to restore one side and leave the other side patinaed for a cool before and after. Now I'm gonna want to let this soak in for at least 24 hours. Another reason why I typically don't use my hand as an applicator is because your body secretes its own oils. So on more delicate jobs, I definitely use an applicator. I should stick to boot restoration. So much surface area. Feels like I'm painting the broadside of a barn. I am running out of leather honey. Uh-oh. Tears in the leather. Now I can patch these, I could even get them sewn, but they're small enough, I don't think they're gonna lead to a major problem. I don't believe that this came from the leather being too brittle that it broke. Probably just some sort of cut in the leather, rubbed up against something. Now my dad used to work for a company called Color Glow. They would restore leather upholstery, leather seats in classic cars and cars with untreated leather, old Porsches, that kind of thing. And he'd go through a few bottles of leather honey on every seat. So it's to be expected. Something to note is most leather in modern cars has a sealant, a clear sealant on the leather, so you don't actually need to condition it. Over time, that sealant will start to crack. That'll be your biggest problem. UV exposure. One of the only modern vehicles that has leather seats that will actually patina and you'll need to condition is the Ford King Ranch. I think it's the F-150 through F-350, could be mistaken. But that actually has treatable leather seats. One entire bottle of leather honey later, you can see the leather is starting to match this original interior zipper condition. All right, now that we've got our leather conditioned, it's softened, it's more supple, we're gonna hang this up and let it dry for at least 24 hours. Now, if you like it how it is, you can just stop after the leather honey application, but we're gonna go a step further. After all this oil has had a chance to soak in, we are going to wax and polish this bad boy. All right, we've let this dry, so we're gonna buff it with a microfiber towel. Now we're ready to wax. Now the mink oil does have oil in it, but it is more of a waxy consistency. So it will create a better barrier and shine than just plain old leather honey. So we're gonna use a sponge to apply this. So I do like to place anything wax-based next to a window with some sunlight, maybe close to a fireplace for just a little bit, so it's a little bit easier to work with. You can already see the level of shine coming through. You want to make sure to use a brush to work it into these stitching sections and seams. I'll just do this one side so you can see a difference in the shine and finish. Hopefully this shows on camera just how much shinier the wax side looks compared to just the side with the leather honey. Now this wax does contain mink oil. You can get something like Waximum if you just want to coat and protect the leather without darkening it with additional mink oil. So once we've let this mink oil wax set in for another 24 hours overnight, we can buff it with a microfiber towel, and that'll cut down on the sheen and shine a bit. It's never gonna be as shiny as it is when you first apply the wax. This wax doesn't just polish the leather and make it shiny, it's also a protective barrier that's going to help this leather last for the decades to come. Another benefit of using a mink oil wax is in my leather honey application, there was still some discoloration, but this mink oil wax will get in there and cover any of that discoloration up. I shouldn't say cover it up, it's gonna penetrate the leather and condition any of those spots we might have missed. I can just notice how much more supple and soft this leather is now versus when we first got the coat when it was very stiff and brittle. To get the most longevity and best looking leather, it does take some routine maintenance, cleaning, conditioning, just general upkeep. If that's not for you, get a denim jacket. Don't they say you never should wash a pair of Levi's? Between cleanings and conditionings, I usually just apply Vaseline to my leather jackets. This helps create a protective barrier against the elements, and it's fairly cheap. Now the woman I purchased this from, this belonged to her late husband. I was considering flipping it for a little bit of profit, but what do you guys think about just gifting it back to her? Leave a comment down below. One of the nice things about this mink oil wax is it just needs a thin layer. We're not letting it soak in as much as the leather honey. If you guys are liking this video, find it at all helpful, please consider subscribing to the channel. We talk about leather care, men's watches, EDC loadouts, and a bunch of other fun stuff. So we'll let this dry overnight, then we'll buff it with a clean microfiber towel. Please consider subscribing to EDC Vibes, and I'll see you in the next video.